Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm your host, George Almasri. Jessica Narula is a real estate investor, mortgage agent, and professional dancer. She started investing in real estate in 2020, and since then she's completed 4 flips, and currently has a portfolio of 10 doors. On this episode, we discuss growing up in India and moving to Canada as a teen, how she got started as a real estate investor, how she met her business partner and started doing flips, why she chose to invest in Cornwall, Ontario, and why she's now currently selling her entire portfolio out there. So I think if you are interested in multi-units and growth and identifying your journey as an investor and realizing when you need to shift and make changes, I think this will be a good episode for you. I hope you'll enjoy it. And if you do, please make sure to leave us a review on the podcast platform that you're listening on. And finally, I just wanted to share with you that I've personally gotten into larger commercial multifamily, and I'm more than happy to discuss with anyone listening who is thinking about making that leap. I'd be happy to share with you my experience so far and all the kind of changes and differences between investing in smaller multifamily compared to commercial multifamily. So if you want to discuss that, then feel free to reach out to me by going to welloff.ca and booking a call, or you can always connect with me on Instagram. So I hope you'll enjoy the episode. This episode was brought to you by Mortgage Dawn with Go Pineapple. All right, I'm here with Jessica Narula. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I always start off, I don't know if you've heard any of the episodes. I know we just met, so maybe not, but I always start off by asking about your childhood. So tell me about where you grew up.
Ooh, that's fun. I've actually never had that happen before. I actually grew up in India. So I was born in India. I came to Canada when I was 14, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I started a month in high school. So high school had already started and I came in. So yeah, it was a fun teenage transition to a different country for sure.
Yeah. Where in India did you grow up?
From Bhopal. It's like a smaller town. I just say Bombay because my mom is from there because most people just know it.
Yeah.
But it's called Bhopal. So it's like a smaller town. And yeah, it was a big transition.
What was it like growing up there?
Honestly, I was like, it's funny. I've been like digging into my childhood a lot as I go into this personal growth journey as well. So it's interesting you asked that question. It was great growing up. I was in a girls' school, like a girls' convent school. And it was like, I remember like playing cricket on the streets and like no playgrounds or anything. So it was fun growing up. But I'm so thankful actually to be here. Like I'm glad my parents pushed to come to this country because I think the opportunities, as much as we love to complain about Ontario and Canada, I think the opportunities it provided me when I came here, I wouldn't have had it when I was back home for sure.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm just so I just recently traveled and I picked up a book for the plane, an audiobook, because I like audiobooks, and I'm reading Trevor Noah's book called Born a Crime. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I haven't actually.
Yeah, so he was raised in South Africa and he was mixed. So his mom was black and his dad was white, and that was illegal at the time when he was born. So he was just kind of talking through like, you know, his childhood and how his mom had to like throw him out of a bus when he was 9 because people were going to murder them.
Oh my God.
So yeah, just like, you know, thinking about like how I grew up in Canada and then you eventually when you came here and how privileged we are and lucky to have all these opportunities and a safe life and all that. So,
absolutely. Yeah, my life wasn't that dramatic in India. Thank God.
Yep.
But it was a very different mindset, I find. And again, like I'm coming from when I'm 32 now, so it was years ago, but when I even like frame of reference at that time, I just find like the way the mindset, the way you thought about money, the way you're like, I remember my mom actually was telling me that it was funny because she told me this yesterday. And I was like, so when I had to get into this convent school, my mom and like everyone around, you had to pay your way into school if you wanted to get into it, right? So it was funny that how, and then when I was back home, it wasn't like we were massively rich or anything. So my mom was telling me how there were certain other families who could afford more, which means their kids got more. So it was just like that dichotomy of like, you see how society runs. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, like how that works and how like that's why I was like learning so much about money mindset and like how your patterns with money affects what you do in business, no matter what business you're in, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, it was fun transition for sure.
Yeah. Did you speak English well when you came, or because I know a lot
Yeah.
India's like everyone speaks pretty much. They speak English and learn English and stuff at
Yeah.
school, right? Because you have
Well,
like no accent pretty much.
it comes out sometimes with the W's and V's, I'm not gonna lie, as my friends love to point out all the time. But I actually, so a lot of people there do speak in Hindi or Punjabi, but I went to a convent school, so I did speak. I learned English. I know it's funny, when I came here in high school, everyone was like, "Do you speak?" And I was just like, just slower doesn't make any difference. I can understand you. It was just the funniest
Did you
thing.
move to Brampton when you came here? Like,
Yeah.
so how did your parents end up coming to Brampton? Was it like, did they have a family member here or something? Or
No, they didn't. Actually, we didn't know anyone here. So my dad used to work with an uncle back in India whose son was here in Brampton.
Yeah.
We ended up living in their basement for, I think, the first few months, and then we ended up renting. And we lived in the basement for a solid like 6 years here. And then my parents bought their first property, then moved, and then sold that, moved into their second and third one, like eventually getting bigger. So yeah, like we didn't know anyone. Like I had no idea whose house I was living in when I came here. So, and my brother worked really well because they had like young kids, like who were guys. So my brother, who's like 4 years younger than me, he automatically made friends, and I was just like, what do I do here? Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about your journey then. You come to Canada, you study here. How did you get involved in real estate, become an investor yourself?
Yeah, so I went to university. I did my whole, because I had, it's a thing, like you have to go to university because you just have to. So I went to university. I did social science because I did not like math or science. The only thing left was social science. So I got my degree in that. I wanted to go to law school. And then I talked to a few lawyers, and they were just like, hated their lives and they quit. And I was like, I don't want to spend that much money, go to law school and like not like it. Because even since I was a kid, I danced, I was more creative. And so that's why I wasn't sure if sitting behind a desk and doing paperwork is what I would love for the rest of my life. So I was like, you know what, let me go to paralegal school instead. It's shorter, and let me test out the field itself. And I did that, and I'm glad I did that because, yes, definitely not my thing. So I actually got introduced to real estate, though. I'm very thankful for that part. As I was a paralegal, I quit 2 jobs because every time I got hired, they made me do real estate transaction, like as a legal assistant.
Like a law clerk.
Law clerk,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, why am I doing real estate? Paralegals don't even study real estate in in paralegal school. But then one job stuck, and I'm thankful. I learned a lot about real estate, and I saw all these like transactions going on my desk, and these big amounts, like because they were doing private lending and things like that, and I was like, I'm doing something wrong because that's not the money I'm seeing, right? So, and then I remember asking my boss at the time for 2 weeks off because I had my cousin's wedding in India, and I was managing the office, and he's like, no, I don't think I can give you that much time off. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I have to ask for 2 weeks of my own life to someone else. And something about that just didn't sit right. I ended up quitting, and of course, I started with Rich Dad Poor Dad because that's just like, the traditional entry into investments. Went to one of their 3-day seminars here. And then obviously their personal coaching is like 30,000-40,000 or something like that. But then I ended up going to every investor meetup from Windsor to London to everywhere. And I still lived in Brampton. So I used to drive back and forth to like Matt McKeever, and like they used to have all of these big events. And I remember going to one of these events, and I come in and they were like, are you Jessica? I was like, yeah. I was like, how do you know? And they're like, you're the only girl signed up. And I was like, great.
Wow. That's
Great.
really cool. That's really cool. That's amazing that you did that.
Yeah, I didn't know that before.
What year was that, by the way?
It was not that long ago. It was maybe 4 years ago. And it's funny because I went to a meetup Andrew's actually the where you heard me, Andrew's meetup
Yeah.
this year, I think. And there was again 3 girls and mostly men. And I asked him, I was like, why is it always like that? And he's like, honestly, I have no idea. And it's just intriguing to me. It's just something I noticed. And because I know there's a lot of female, like realtors,
Yeah.
mortgage brokers, there's a lot of them. Like I worked for Pro Funds before. Carmen Campanero, who's a big builder, and she has a REIT, and she's a complete badass. So it's just interesting to see that. But yeah, like that's how I started. So I started going to investor meetups. Then I bought like my first property in 2020, and I signed the contract, and bam, COVID hit. So it was, and I was like, everyone was just freaking out collecting toilet paper at that time, and I was like, I'm buying a property. I don't know what I'm doing. But that was an interesting property too. It was meant to be a rent, a hold, like a buy and hold, and I ended up flipping it for a lot of reasons. And then I met my business partner at one of these meetups, and we ended up doing flips together. He was a contractor. And then I started investing for more buy and holds in Cornwall, and I have one in Brampton now as well.
All right, couple questions for you.
Yes.
First of all, when you were the only woman in the room full of investors, was that ever like intimidating? Did it ever feel like, you just wanted to kind of be quiet and just let the time pass, or how did you feel in that moment?
I honestly it was funny because the speaker was a woman, and when I came in, she was like, "Can you sit in the front so I feel better?" And I was like, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I remember I went on a retreat with a bunch of real estate investors who were women, like Sarah Eder had organized it. And Daniela, she ended up recognizing me from one of her previous investment events. And she's like, I remember you being really quiet and sitting in the corner. And I was like, yeah, because it was just, I remember feeling intimidated for sure. I still had conversations. I still forced myself to have conversations. It's like I drove 3 hours to London. I better have a conversation here.
Yeah.
But it was, as I dig into like the whole limiting beliefs too, I think what you see around it, almost sometimes you feel like, is it even possible for women to do it? Like it's just, you start a little bit inherently without realizing, you start questioning a little bit. So I had to break a certain amount of belief pattern to be like, you know what, maybe I'm just not seeing there are amazing women who are doing this. And I started following some of them in the States, and I was like, okay, so there are women doing it. I just somehow maybe haven't come across them here. And now I have, though. Like when we went to the retreat, I saw like it was a women, like it was 10 of us, all female real estate investors. And it was so empowering to like be around them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This is it's completely different actually, but because we were talking about dancing and how I went to a dance studio a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I remember they had these like adult drop-in classes. So I would just show up, and I didn't know what was going on that night, who was doing the class, but it happened to be like somebody's birthday, a girl's birthday.
Okay.
And she had invited like 15 of her girlfriends, and I was the only guy in the room, and they were doing like the most feminine Beyonce song. I don't even remember what song it was, but I was like, oh man, I drove 45 minutes to come here, but I really don't want to do this.
No.
But I ended up doing it anyway, and it was probably similar to how you
Yes,
felt.
it was. It's like that weird feeling of like you're so uncomfortable, but like you made a commitment to be there.
Yeah.
So you might as well use that time kind of thing.
Yeah, like they weren't expecting me to show up, right? But nobody told me that they had this birthday thing going on that night. So anyway.
You got to look at the class. I feel like it might have been like a jazz funk or something class.
Yeah.
It sounds like it.
They don't give you any information. It was just adult drop-in. That's it. You show up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a good time. I got out of my comfort zone, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's what helps you be almost like a better version of you, right?
When there was a lot of hips involved, the instructor was like, you don't have to do that. Just do something else.
just it's okay.
Yeah, just let this pass over. Yeah. But anyway,
funny.
that's how it goes sometimes when you're trying to get out of your comfort zone, push yourself, grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also like you should now, if you go to classes, there's like they have names, so like just make sure you go to like a hip hop.
I haven't been to one in so long, but I think it would be good to go back there.
Yeah.
It's like it really helped because I used to be that guy that was like so afraid of people looking at me, at a party or at a wedding or something, and I just stand there or like sit and do nothing. Now I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what I wanted.
Absolutely. And I think it's also like if you're especially working in real estate, I think in any industry, we come with a lot of stress, right? I think it's just a good release overall. Like you're moving your body, your energy. Like, I mean, it's like similar to working out, right? It just gets like that, your mind out of that stressful situation too, which I find it very helpful to kind of refresh and restart the next day.
Yeah. And well, I mean, we're kind of going into this a little bit, but I just found that it was like cool to work my brain in a way that I hadn't worked it before, to like follow steps, choreo.
Yeah.
Like this is what I'm seeing and I need to replicate that with my body. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your dancing, because you've been involved for a long time, right?
Yes.
And you're a professional dancer.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about
I know. Yeah, like I've been dancing since a kid. Like I said, my parents put me in. As I grew up in India, I had to do Bollywood, obviously. So like I did Bollywood for pretty much most of my life, performed at like, those Dundas Square TD events and stuff like that with like a group of us. Those were all like paid gigs and stuff like that. And then last like 6 years, I got into like different styles like hip hop. And now I mostly train in hip hop. And if I perform, it's like mostly fusion or hip hop. But yeah, like I truly believe I had at a point in my life, I was like not even saying that I'm a dancer. And now that I'm like, the amount of time commitment I do to dance, I was like, oh my God, I should change that conversation. And yeah, like I still perform, I still do it professionally. Not as much, like I don't go out of my way to get gigs in any way. And that's where real estate helps because I can still like, the monetary, the things, financial part is kind of taken care of by the real estate. And now I'm not, a dancer in the sense I'm like looking for gigs for money. I'm doing it because I truly just love it. And it's like something that it's like my creative outlet. Right.
Yeah.
So that was like a big realization for me because I feel like a lot of my friends who are dancers, they get into the survival mode of just doing things and getting gigs and teaching and things like that because that's their only means. And also they don't know what to do with the money when it comes. Like there's very little financial literacy. And now a lot of my friends are recognizing that and they're like asking questions and like how they can get their finances in order or where should they start even, right? So it's been like an interesting places to be in for sure.
Yeah, and you were saying that you were looking at starting a fund or something to help dancers. What did you call it? Artist investment fund?
Yeah, like it was just that's the name that came up right now. It's not a planned name right now, but I don't know if it's going to be a fund. I'm still in talks of like how I can do it with the securities lawyers and things like that and what that would look like. Because a lot of dancers, like a lot of my friends have done movies and when they do them, they get 30-40K easily, right? And I remember having this conversation a couple of years ago with one of my friends who was 20, 21, and as a kid he got into this much money and he had no idea what to do with it, right? So I want to create like a less intimidating way of them to start investing. And obviously they don't want to manage properties, they don't want to deal with tenants, they don't want to do all of this stuff, right? But I was like, I've kind of already done it. So it would be like an asset management. So essentially I want to find ways that they can passively, like a private lender, invest, but if they can, like even smaller amounts, like 5,000, if anything, right? Because I think them starting with these smaller amounts and getting them out of, like we're talking about, out of their comfort zone, and creating a long-term like wealth strategy for them. Because I feel like there's that whole starving artist is like so embedded, and it doesn't have to be. So just, yeah, like creating different avenues where they can get into real estate and still continue to be creative and create what they want to do and live as an artist full time, but somehow like take that pressure for finance off.
Yeah, for sure. That's a cool idea. It's really cool to talk to different people and who have different backgrounds and see how their brain's working and what they have in store for the future. So
Yeah.
good idea. Hopefully you can always put that together. You can make anything happen, really.
100%. And that's why I was just like, but I want to do it like without like properly systems are done, because again, like I spoke to a securities lawyer, you need to have certain amount ready in your accounts, and then you add investments, and like just the legality and the logistics of it I'm working through. And like one of my friends who's also a dancer and a realtor, we actually started a podcast together to kind of create that, like a little bit of like a bridge between the industries, but also just like, it sounds so cliche, but make real estate fun. So it's like something they even want to look into, right? But yeah, like it's going to be an interesting journey. I'll definitely, next time we catch up, I'll let you know how that part is going.
For sure. But if we go back to what you were saying, so you were going to all these meetups across kind of southern Ontario, driving 2-3 hours, and you met a partner there.
Yeah.
So a business partner, and you started doing flips together. So was that in Cornwall, you said?
No, so the flips were in the GTA.
Okay.
Because it's funny, because the partner I met was in Toronto. It was Austin Ye's meetup, Rise Network. They used to do meetups here too. It was there I met him. And we did like flips in Durham region. So our first one was in like Ajax. We did Burlington, kind of like anywhere in the GTA pretty much, or close to the GTA.
And this was during like the 2020 to 2022 sort of years when things were skyrocketing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you probably did pretty well during that time.
So flips worked out really well for us. Like, I remember like a semi-detached Burlington home. The renovations were immaculate. We did amazing. Our people who were helping their realtors and stuff, everyone did amazing. We were hoping for maybe 900, ended up selling for like over $1 million. A semi outside was okay in like Burlington. We were like, what? We're like, we'll take it, but what?
Yeah.
So the flips actually, turned out.
How many flips did you do?
Did about 4.
4 flips in a span of about 2 years?
2 years, so about 6 months each.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then what'd you do after that? You said you bought something in Brampton after that?
For those of you who are looking for the best interest rates, it's worth noting that interest rates do have their seasonalities. Usually during the spring and fall time, we're in what we call the hot real estate market, where we're seeing a lot of real estate transactions. And this is where lenders will want to take market share. So they do want to become as competitive on interest rates as possible. Outside of that, you may also follow the bond yields for fixed rates. If it's going up or down, usually this will have a direct impact on the fixed rates. I would love to connect with you for all your mortgage-related questions. You can reach me at 647-961-3281, or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Mortgage Dawn.
So Brampton was actually end of last year. So then I bought. So we both, me and my business partner, parted ways, not in a negative way. We just wanted to do more holds now, essentially, because the flip market changed pretty much.
Yep.
And then I started doing JVs with other investors, other partners who I've known and had money, and I wanted to already invest, and they ended up reaching out because they saw what I was doing. So we bought a duplex in Cornwall, then we bought a 5-plex, and then 2 townhouses in Cornwall in the last like year and a half. And then last year I bought a house in Brampton. All of them were off-market wholesale deals. So yeah, that's been the portfolio. We sold the duplex in Cornwall already. We still have the 5-plex, the 2 townhouses, and the one in Brampton.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what brought you to Cornwall? Why'd you pick that area?
Price point. We bought the duplex for like $220, and like you would not getting like, I know Windsor in the Southern Ontario was at that price point at one point when I was starting out, but every investor I knew was already there. Like London, Chatham, Sarnia, like that was just all towns that every investor was going into.
Well, if you have a big group in London, like Matt McKeever's group,
Yeah.
they're going to go to the outskirts, right? So that's going to be taken. But
Exactly.
not a lot of people spoke about Cornwall too much. I remember, I don't know if you know Mark Loeffler.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so he used to advertise, if I remember correctly, like a couple deals out there.
Yeah.
And he would talk about how the cash flow is really good, but I didn't really hear anyone else talk about Cornwall.
Yeah, actually my business partner who I used to do flip with, he started there too. And I was like, okay. And then I ended up getting an off-market deal from Claude Boyron's team. And that was like my first property I bought there. And it was like that perfect child that I was like, we did really well on that. And then the contractor who was working on that duplex ended up introducing me to the person who was selling the 5-plex and the townhouses.
Okay.
So that's how I heard about Cornwall. I am selling all of my Cornwall stuff though.
Okay.
On that note, I realized here's the thing with small towns and Ontario. This is again my personal opinion. You will have the price point, but you will also have a tenant profile that you are opening yourself up to. And then it's your complete choice if you want to continue to have that tenant profile. You're also long distance investing. And I know people have made it sound a little easier, like long distance investing. You find a property manager there, you're good, you don't have to do it. There is a time lapse though, right? Before you can have people who you find there you can depend on, you still have to put in the time and energy to visit, to meet people, to travel, right? So I found in Cornwall personally that finding the right property manager was tricky for me. And I spoke to a bunch of investors who are already down there. They mostly self-manage or have someone in-house manage it. So for me, I am about 4 hours away. So for me, I'm also currently dealing with a non-paying tenant and who is making the whole building's life interesting. I'm just going to be very polite. So
is this a tenant that you inherited from the purchase, or it was
a property manager who put it in there?
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey with that, and that's on the 5-plex. So what I also realized with smaller towns, property manager, but also they're not used to condo living. They're not used to. They want square footage, right? Like in Toronto, we're used to living in boxes. They're not so much, right? So you'll find better tenants if you're in a house. So for instance, the duplexes and the townhouses, spectacular tenants in there, right? Because they're families, they take care of the house and everything. The 5-plex, because the units are smaller, you attract a different kind of audience. And I realized no matter what kind of renovations you do, if you have a certain property, you will attract a certain audience who is okay to live in that space and can afford it, essentially. So for me, it was a lot of learning in the last few years. Also, we will be fine once we sell it. I just feel like with the landlord tenant board, how it's in Ontario currently, with some of the other, just the logistics of the return we'll make even after we'll sell it, even though we'll make a return, for the headache, for me personally, it didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. As I grew so quickly in the 3 years, I did so much. I'm realizing your health, your mental health, your physical health, way more important, right? Because if you don't have that, no matter how much money you make, it somehow will sound cliche, but it will be irrelevant.
Yeah. I think that's a big deal. What you're mentioning now about the mental health aspect, it's not really talked about too much, but I think that it can be very difficult sometimes. Actually, I just did an episode recently released with 2 nutritionists on stress management, and we were touching on that, what you can do, the foods you can eat, that sort of thing. But that is really big because as you grow your portfolio, you have more problems to deal with, and that can start taking a toll on you personally. So making sure that you set things up, like you're saying, your portfolio has to reflect the lifestyle that you want, and not just, looking after certain numbers and reaching certain goals financially. You got to think about your personal life as well.
100%. 101%. Like that's why like one of the things I'm now looking at is investing in places and countries where I would actually visit and live, right? Because I'm not going to Cornwall and staying there in any way. Like that's just not what I personally want to do. So for me, the Brampton property though was, I felt like yes, you might be breaking even, and as some people would say, appreciation is gambling. In Ontario, it has grown consistently, so it's like a safer gamble, I guess, in a way. So the property in Brampton, even though I'm breaking even, I do believe it's a way better asset than my entire portfolio in Cornwall because of the fact that it's in a great area, close to GTA, and already like half a year, even in a low market, I bought it at a good price. It appreciated like $200,000.
What type of property is it?
It's a full detached home and like close
Single family
Single
or 2
family.
units? Yeah.
So we already have a permit, so we're gonna make it 2 units. But right now it's single family, and I have beautiful tenants in there who take care of it. Like I went in there for an appraisal, and I was like, "Are they Airbnb-ing it?" But then I saw all of their stuff, like just the way they had organized it. It's just like she's like a clean freak, and I was like, I love you so much, thank you.
Yeah.
So like yeah, then you also GTA, I'm not saying you'll find all perfect tenants, but I feel like the tenant profile a lot better.
Did you buy that Brampton place off a wholesaler?
With actually Bliss.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of business with them actually. Yeah.
Cool. And was it vacant when you bought it?
Yes.
Did it need a lot of work?
No, that's why it was
turnkey?
great. It was like, you know, those lipstick but not even lipstick kind of places you painted, and that's all.
Are you comfortable sharing the numbers on that? I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
just give us like a rough idea of what you bought it for, how much you had to put into it for renovations, and the rent you're getting.
Yeah, for sure. So we bought it at $770 with the wholesale fee. Then we did about 5,000 worth of renovations. The rents I'm getting right now are 3,400 for the full house. And then once we convert into duplex, the rents will change. But we bought it off like a private lender. So we bought it with a private lender because most wholesale is just quicker closings, easier. And the most of our cost was for the holding costs. That took away our profit essentially. So yeah, those are like the basic numbers. When we bought it with private lending, now we refinance it with CIBC. It wasn't a burr because by the time we got to refinance, we ended up like the banks got really conservative. The banks were extremely conservative. So we weren't able to refi the way we wanted it to.
So you didn't get like 80% loan to value, you're saying?
Yeah. So we ended up getting, so we got a new appraisal at 860 already in like 2 months, right? But then the banks, because they saw what we bought it at one point, banks were refinancing based off of the appraisal at a refi. That's not the case anymore, right? A lot of them, like especially if you bought it within the year, they will question a lot of things. So yeah, we just didn't get the refi, but now I still do believe, even though we're about just break even with the numbers there, and the tenants pay all the utilities, so it's just our taxes and insurance and that. But like that asset for me mentally is like my peace, you know. So we were talking about our mental health. Like tenants are great, barely call me, message me, nothing. If anything, they call me when they want to give me rent, and like that's about it, right? So I just find it, that's why I was just like, again, it might be my specific experience because I've had people who've invested in the GTA and might not have had the same experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, so for me, that's where the Brampton one makes sense, and I will keep that one, but I'm selling the Cornwall.
Okay. Not to like get into it too much, but just give me an idea of what kind of issues you've run into in Cornwall that you find is just difficult to deal with.
So you'll find a lot of, so what's with Cornwall, they're used to cheap rents years back, like say 7 years, 8 years back, right? A lot of people there are on ODSP, welfare, so you'll find a lot of that audience, and the rents have inflated insanely. For instance, like my 220 duplex was fully rented for like $2,700, right? So the rents are still pretty much not far from Ottawa, Montreal, or Toronto, to be honest. But I find because there's a lot of it's a great location. It's close to US, Montreal. It's like great location. So a lot of new immigrants are coming in, and a lot of investors are going in there too, which means that the rents are getting jacked up and it's the audience that's not used to that rent yet. That is also a major population of Cornwall, right? And then there's a lot of increase of homelessness there. So there's a lot of like tenants who are not getting places to rent, I find are your problem tenants.
So are you saying that it's hard finding good tenants?
Yes.
Is that so you're putting something up on the market and it's taking you a while. You got to go through a lot of applications. You're not really getting the kind of tenant that you're hoping for.
Yeah, and it takes time. And also I realize I'm getting a lot faster turnout for larger families. I mean larger homes, so like duplexes and which have a backyard, and townhouses which have like space, square footage. It's for my fiveplex that are smaller units that I'm getting a lot of tenants that I wouldn't want to rent, ideally.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a common thing. Like I have a couple of units right now in Brantford for rent. And so we just took the building over, and 2 units that are for rent are renovated.
Yeah.
So they're already completely done. It's a nice building. But we just put it up for rent maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And we've had a bunch of applications, but they're not what we're looking for. And it's just a matter of being patient and waiting for the right person, because you don't want to rush into it and pick the wrong person. Then you have a lot of issues to deal with.
Yes, I have that too. Dealt with that. Actually, still dealing with that. So, like I completely agree. I wish, like at the point where I'm at a point now I understand this. And like before, most of the tenants I worked out, and that's been great. And like I was, for instance, like rushing my property manager to fill up a unit, and they filled it up all right. But to a person who, if you just Google their names, you'll be like, what? Like it was just that simple, right? And now with the landlord and tenant board, again, with long distance investing, what I found, if you don't have a team there, for instance, a good paralegal, a good property manager, it will make it tricky, because then if you have that team, I think it's a lot easier to manage, right? So my paralegal, who like took 4 months, and I realized that not the right choice of a paralegal, switched to the paralegal, and so this person is going to be not paying and living for about a year before I can get him out and get a hearing. I have a hearing date in March, and they've been living there without rent since February, right? So for me, and then now they have dogs barking, they're yelling at each other, and like they're doing something upstairs where the ceiling is leaking and stuff like that, which is affecting the downstairs tenant, and now making it hard for the unit to across to rent. So it's been interesting with that specific property. So that's why I was just like, for me, I'm like, imagine consistently hearing that, right? Like imagine consistently, even just through text. It's like, it's not worth my mental health, to be honest.
So you're saying, let me just sell these properties. I'd rather take the money, put it into a different type of asset, and just kind of have it in something that suits my lifestyle a little bit better.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is completely fair. And I guess like that's the thing about investing. When you start in a certain place, and then you grow and you learn and you figure out what you want, your portfolio changes, because
100%.
What you wanted 3-4 years ago is not the same as what you want today.
100%. It's like, I call it data collection and feedback, right? As you do more, you get more data points. You get things you learned, and then you get more feedback as to like, okay, this worked, this didn't. What I had a hard time to, as real estate investors, we all very proudly say we're real estate investors, which we should. But then I realized it became my identity. Like I had to fight myself to be like, let those properties go, like let it go. Because it was like, but I worked so hard to build this. And it was just like, you're battling that identity that you created. And as I get into this world of like, I've been working on myself and just this personal growth and like, like the stress stuff. So like I've getting into like NLP and tapping and different breath work and different meditation, ice plunge and saunas. And I've been doing it for a while now. And like now I'm getting more into like, I used to be really into working out, like super into working out, and I was in the best shape, and then real estate happened. And I was like, the stress, like I realized my body was holding on to like fat to cope up with the stress, right? So I was just like, my health is not worth, like, it's not worth all of this. So I had to like let go of that identity as well to be like, I am still a real estate investor, even if I sell these properties. So yeah, like it was a hard sell, but like you said, you grow, you learn more, and then your portfolio changes.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about mortgages. So this is kind of your new journey. So tell us a bit about that.
Honestly, actually, I've been a mortgage agent for 5 years.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
I thought you were just getting your broker's license.
So agent. I've been an agent for 5 years at this point. So when I actually started getting into the investment side, the one missing thing I couldn't understand is like, how are people doing this? Where's this money coming from? So I wanted to understand the financing side better. So I got my my mortgage license, worked for in-house brokerage for a bit. And then I worked for Pro Funds for a little bit, like tried bunch of different brokerages. And then last year I was still doing deals for my existing clients. But I stopped taking on new clients because I was just busy managing all of these portfolio and all of the tenants and things like that. And then now I'm getting my broker's license. It's just an upgrade essentially. So I've been
it's like realtors, kind of the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like after a certain number of years, you're able to do so. And even when I started as my mortgage career, I focus on investors. I've done 2 first-time homebuyers deal in my entire career. Everyone I work with has been an investor. And I niched out right away, which I actually was like probably the smartest thing I did because I could speak their language. I could understand what they're saying, what the burr was. And now I know a lot of mortgage brokers and realtors are aware of all of these investment strategies. But even in the last 4 or 5 years, most of them weren't, right? So I mostly dealt with like a lot of private lending, a lot of flips, a lot of B lending because a lot of my clients were self-employed. So yeah, like my mortgage side, now I'm studying for my broker's license, and like I realize in this economy too, your cash flow is important. Like, where is that coming from? And within real estate, I realize you still want to have multiple sources so you can structure your business in a way where your investments are your investments. They're not paying your bills every day. And not like that was the case before, but I've seen investors who like they do that full time, but then they realize they're cash tight. Right. So you have to still, whether that you're working another job or working another business or whatever it may be, I personally would like to have multiple sources, but I know real estate. So I was like, within real estate, I'll expand. Yeah.
That's the cool thing about being an investor. You have your portfolio, which is going to grow over time, grow your wealth, and then you can always do something on the side to make now money if you need it.
Yep.
Coaching, mortgage broker, realtor, like there's so many different ways you can do it, or wholesaling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been like I'm trying to find ways, like you said, the lifestyle. I want to be able to travel a lot. So I'm creating, even outside of real estate, like looking into more digital like marketing stuff and things like that. Not for my own business technically, but just creating online sources of income as well. And I know it's a cliche, but like most successful billionaire or millionaire people, I can't remember, have like 7 sources of income. I don't know why that's a number, but I just heard that's a number. So I was like, okay, what can I do to create multiple sources? So that way it's still cash heavy, and in a certain way also create passive, like true passive. People say owning rentals is passive. Well, it's not if you're managing it yourself, right? It's not necessarily as passive as it sounds sometimes. Mm-hmm. So like truly creating passive ways to create wealth, I think it's very important.
For sure. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing well. Like in the last couple of years, you haven't been at this for too long, and you've grown a pretty good portfolio, and you've learned a lot along the way. Do you feel like there's anything we've missed in this conversation? Any points you want to discuss before we end things?
No, nothing. I think we went through everything from dance to real estate and investing. But yeah, just like I'm looking into other countries like the US, and even I went to Tulum, and out of the 7 days I was there, for 2 days I was looking at real estate. So I do believe there's a lot of opportunities if we expand our minds. And like I said, like I want to invest in places that when I go there, I want to visit. So yeah, I'm definitely looking into other places outside of Ontario to now invest in, and just running numbers, getting comfortable with the people there. Lesson learned from Cornwall: first build a team, first build that connection, I think is important. And then once I feel like, okay, you'll never feel 100% ready, but when I feel like that 80%,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go ahead and start outside of Ontario for sure.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, good luck if you do end up going to the States or Tulum or wherever. To end things, how do people reach you, and what services are you offering these days?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on Instagram. Is probably the best way. Just shoot me a
Watch
DM.
you dance.
Yes, it's not a lot of dance on there, guys. But shoot me a DM. I don't post a lot. I really should get better at that part. So shoot me a DM. JessN.invest is my Instagram handle. If you want to reach out, you can, any mortgage needs, feel free to reach out for that. And also, if you just need to talk about investments and need help like strategizing, or maybe just getting my opinion on certain things, feel free to reach out. I actually love talking about real estate as much as it stresses me out.
Yep. Well, thank you for sharing your story and for coming by today. And I look forward to seeing you on your journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Well Off Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then I'd really appreciate if you left us a review on iTunes and let us know your thoughts. In order for us to get a larger audience, it's really important to have reviews, so your support is extremely appreciated. And also, don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, I'm George Almasri. Have a great day.